Welcome everyone to the NTT Podcast channel, where we share knowledge and life perspectives, and also a place where you can improve your English skills. Today's topics are the temptation from other people's issues. What should we young people do? Safety and sadness, victim blaming. When the victim is the guilty party, and finally, emotions or logic. Think for yourself or care for society. Let's get started. First topic, the temptation from other people's issues. Let's pretend for a moment that you are a 22-year-old college student in Kampala, Uganda. You are sitting in class, secretly scrolling through Facebook on your phone. You come across news of another shooting in the U.S., this time in a place called San Bernardino. You have never heard of this place. You have never been to the U.S., but you've definitely heard a lot about gun violence in America. It seems like there's a new shooting almost every week. You wonder if you could go there and get a stricter gun control law passed. You would be a hero to the American people, a problem solver, a lifesaver. How hard could it be? Maybe there's a scholarship for ambitious people like you to go to the U.S. after graduation and be trained to become social entrepreneurs. You could start a nonprofit aimed at ending gun violence, perhaps even winning a humanitarian award by the time you're 30. Sounds hopelessly naive, doesn't it? Even a bit delusional? Yes, it does. Yet, this naivete is not too different from how many Americans think about social change in the global South. If you asked a 22-year-old American about gun control in her country, she would likely tell you that it's much more complicated than just attending a few workshops on social enterprise and starting a nonprofit. She might explain to her friend from Kampala about the intractable nature of American legislation, the long history of gun culture in her country, and the fervent supporters of it, the complexities of mental health issues and their treatments. She would probably even mention the additional messiness when an outsider calls for change. But if you ask that same 22-year-old American about some of the most pressing issues in a place like Uganda, rural poverty, education for girls, or discrimination against LGBTQ individuals, she would probably assume these problems are solvable, perhaps even easily solvable. I'm beginning to think of this tendency as the temptation to oversimplify other people's problems. It's not necessarily bad. In many ways, we can explain this tendency from a psychological perspective, that we don't know what we don't know. The common problems of the whole world, of society as a whole, lead many to voice their calls or complaints to position themselves as the clean outsider, while others are the foolish insiders, as if we have no choice but to coexist with them. What do you think about this topic? Please leave a comment so we can discuss it together. Goodbye and see you in the next podcast episodes. Second topic, what should we young people do? Every society, regardless of the era, has its own set of issues. Randomly, the thought that comes to my mind now is a quote I love from Obama's speech in Cuba. I also want to tell you what I deeply believe. I don't need you to agree with me, but you need to know what I believe. And that is also the first message I want to share with you, someone who will patiently read through this entire piece. When we are young, it is truly unfortunate if someone does not have a dream. Otherwise, surely everyone loves to dream about big things, always wanting to do something to change the world. Yet as we grow a little older, we realize that if our country is a better place, the world will undoubtedly be much happier. But then at the age of 40, when most people are married and juggling the complexities of life, we come to realize that a happy family, living in a way that benefits society, is enough to make our country a better place. Time goes on, and many elderly people have told me, when you are old and retired, you realize that just being a useful person in society is already great. At least, society does not have another rogue. So what must we do to change the world? Most of us are just ordinary folks in classrooms, clubs, volunteer teams, and businesses or organizations. Therefore, our daily actions may seem very small within the organizations and communities we live in. Looking a little further, we must acknowledge that the changes in our country do not significantly impact the progression of the world. So, are we, ordinary people working in normal environments and citizens of a country that does not have much influence, not given the opportunity to change the world? I would like to quote Admiral William H. McRaven, former commander of the U.S. Special Operations Command, USIC, who organized the raid that killed terrorist leader Osama bin Laden during the 2014 University of Texas graduation. On average, every American will meet 10,000 people in their lifetime. But among those people you meet, if you change the lives of 10 individuals, and each of those then goes on to change the lives of 10 more, just 10, then after 5 generations, 125 years, the class of 2014 will have changed the lives of 800 million people. Think about it. 800 million people is more than double the population of the United States. And with just one more generation, you will have changed the lives of the entire global population, 8 billion people. But if you think it is very hard to change the life of 10 people permanently, then you are mistaken. I have seen how we change each other's lives every day in Iraq and Afghanistan. An army officer decides to turn left instead of right on a road in Baghdad, saving 10 soldiers from an ambush. Not only do those soldiers stay alive because of one person's decision, but their future children, those unborn kids, are alive because of that decision. And even their grandchildren. Just one right decision by one person can save a few generations. The Confucian doctrine of self-cultivation, family regulation, national governance, and world peace has 9 key phrases that simply convey the following. To change the world, to achieve universal peace, one must first govern their country well. To develop a nation, governance, one must first manage and correct their family well. To have a family that benefits society, family regulation, one must first be strong and upright within themselves and cultivate the courage of a sage. Therefore, changing the world does not have to be something too difficult. It simply starts from ourselves. As mentioned above, my friends and I know that our daily actions are quite small. But I still believe that as young people wanting to change the world, we should do our daily tasks well, remain vocal about the issues in our country, care for our own mental health, stay engaged with those around us, and live kindly through small daily actions. Those small actions can help those around us become better, and then those individuals can positively influence others as well. Thus, I believe your world will change over time. You may disagree, but I still want you to know what I believe. One swallow does not make a spring, but when one swallow flaps its wings, it already signals the arrival of a beautiful spring. Third topic, safety and sadness. In moments of boredom, failure, or despair, people often think about and do negative things or things that have haunted them before. This often leads to further failures or makes us truly hopeless. There is a way to address this. Remain silent and wait for it to pass. Because as long as we are alive, nothing is as terrible as we once thought. We just need to wait for it to pass. You could try thinking about what you currently have and start giving it up in a gradual and safe manner. For example, money. When feeling bored, if you have money, you might end up buying beer, alcohol, cigarettes, going to a bar, or at least going shopping to the max. Usually, these things only provide temporary relief from boredom, and afterwards, you'll feel even worse. due to being out of money or because of other consequences. Therefore, the first step is to give up money. Take all the cash out of your wallet, put it into a piggy bank or a safe deposit box for extra security, and stash your credit cards and ATM cards away somewhere that you can find them later, but it should take a long time to access them. Do whatever necessary to become someone without a cent to their name. Without money, it's slightly harder to do foolish things. You can also try giving up other things, like not using your dominant hand anymore, or not using your eyes, or even not using the internet, haha. Don't sleep all day in the house. Go outside for a walk. Find a place with greenery, flowers, water, and a quiet spot to be alone. You might find that there isn't anything particularly interesting there, and you may not feel happier. But you might realize that joy and sadness aren't that important. As long as you're alive, things can always change. Perhaps afterwards you'll recognize that you have many things that are precious and worthy, and you'll safely get through the sadness. You will still feel sad, probably, but you will be safer while enduring it. And when it passes, you'll still be able to see everything, still be able to use your dominant hand, and still have money. Fourth topic, victim blaming, when the victim is the guilty party. Victim blaming is a fairly common occurrence. It's like when a person is killed by a murderer, blaming the victim is akin to saying, he died because it was his fault for not learning karate or taekwondo well enough to protect himself, so the murderer killed him. And if a woman dresses provocatively, it does not mean others have the right to rape her. It's similar to saying that just because someone eats a cake attractively, it invites others to steal that cake. Since childhood, we are taught that the bad will be punished by the heavens and the good will be rewarded. However, when misfortune continuously befalls good people, it means that the fairy godmother and the heavens cannot protect everyone. It is even more unjust when the victims who need support and protection from inhumane perpetrators become the focus of criticism and insult. They are stereotyped, doubted in their dignity, and must live under the scrutiny and derogatory remarks of society. Have you ever heard others say things like, "What was she wearing? Dressing like that, it's no wonder she got raped. Why would a woman travel alone? She went out late and got drunk. Now who is to blame? Who told her to drive a fancy car? Why wear so much gold that it attracts robbers?" There is unreasonable and blind sympathy for the criminals. Why is a girl or a child who is raped or harmed treated with disdain and scorn by society as if the crime happened because of them? What has made blaming the victim a reaction or mindset of public opinion when faced with injustice and moral decay? Is it simply because the victims are women, children, those who are vulnerable and cannot resist? It is not without reason that humans are called higher animals. Among the reasons for being considered superior, there is the so-called ability to self-control. The attitude that, if you dress too provocatively, you're just asking to be raped, suggests that we have not fully evolved in our thinking. While the police and courts strive to punish the criminals appropriately, malicious comments filled with criticism arise, blaming the victims instead of holding the despicable perpetrators accountable for their crimes. Out at night, coming home alone, wearing a spaghetti strap top, and many other reasons are offered by those who like to blame for the uncontrollable actions of the criminals. According to them, the victim has to pay for their lack of awareness, allure, and naivety. Cursing, disparaging, and stigmatizing comments are increasingly prevalent, especially on social media, indirectly encouraging and covering for the misdeeds of the wicked, pushing the victims into walls of humiliation and shame, forcing them to become the wrongdoers, foolish and deserving of such punishments. The vilification of the victims does not stop at mere criticism. The punishments directed at victims are the cruelest of all. Final topic: emotions or logic? Think for yourself or care for society? I recently came across an interesting article discussing the issue of whether or not to pay kidnappers. The gist is that according to a recent study from the University of Texas at Dallas, paying kidnappers is more harmful than beneficial because it encourages them to carry out more abductions, thereby causing harm to others as well as to society as a whole. In fact, this study also shows that countries that tend to pay ransoms for abducted individuals often experience up to 87% more kidnapping cases. This is a significant number, making me think and want to debate a bit with you all about a broader topic. Emotion or reason? What is the right thing to do? In theory, as the study I just mentioned suggests, one should not pay kidnappers to protect others. However, everything changes when you add the emotional factor. What if it were your brother/sister or your child? I bet that most people would panic and do whatever it takes to rescue their loved one because, after all, those people in society are still strangers, and one tends to prioritize their own first. Being overly rational can come off as cold-hearted. Okay, this case might seem extreme, and choosing to ransom a loved one is pretty straightforward. Let's try another scenario. You know that giving money to children begging on the streets will only encourage those pimps to exploit even more children and expand their operations. In the long run, this behavior will certainly have a negative impact on society. Logically speaking, that's true, but in front of you is a little beggar wearing worn-out sandals, around 5 or 6 years old, ragged and suffering. Your heart wants to help by giving money, assuming you don't have the time to support them in other ways. But your rational side knows that giving money ultimately harms the kids and society more than not giving it. What do? If that case still seems a bit distant, consider another one, which is probably more relatable, unless you're single. This time, you've just broken up with your partner and know that they won't be able to forget you quickly. The rational action would be to cut off contact for a while, so they can regain their composure and move on. However, your emotions tell you to help them get through this pain because there's still a bond, even though you know that continuing to talk and be close to them would only make them more weary and hopeful, which wouldn't really help in their recovery. So, do you follow reason or emotion now? I think in all three of these cases, it's likely that most of us wouldn't choose all answers in one direction. So what is the difference? Where is the line that helps us distinguish right from wrong? This is the end of today's podcast. What do you think about the issues discussed in today's video? Please leave a comment or hit like and follow. Goodbye, and see you in the next episodes of the podcast.